At Chipotle, we also have a playlist. Guacamole as it's being hand-mashed. The sizzle of adobo chicken on the grill. The chopping of onions and cilantro. We call our playlist Real. Order now. Chipotle. For real.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised.
Okay, let's start off with your name and title, basically how you'd like me to refer to you in the podcast.
Hi, I'm Barbara Butcher. I'm a medical legal death investigator with a long career, and I like to be referred to as Barbara, and that's about it. Okay, great. So talk about your MLI job description. I have your book here, What the Dead Know. You're an author now. It's an amazing book, and I am just loving it. But talk about what that job description entitled and how long you've been doing it. You know, people, when they think about death investigation, they think in terms of a forensic pathologist, someone who does the autopsy. But an autopsy only tells you one thing, the cause of death. So take the case of a gunshot wound. It could be a homicide, suicide, even an accident. And how do you determine that on an autopsy table? You don't. You have a death investigator, an experienced person who knows medicine, who knows investigation, who knows forensics, go to the scene, investigates the body in its context, in its surroundings. And that way we are the eyes and ears of the forensic pathologists. We can tell them, was there a gun present? Was there blood spatter on a wall? Was there a bullet impact mark? Was there DNA? Was there biological material we could harvest for DNA? And working with the police, we investigate the body and the scene, and then we relate the two. Then with my photographs, sketches, and my report, that goes to the forensic pathologist who can now do an informed autopsy.
Mm-hmm. So what I was fascinated by is just the clues that you're looking for when you walk in. It's not necessarily like a detective show where you're looking at, okay, are there any doors and windows? Are they secured? Are they open? Are you looking at medications? To find out if it's a natural, as you referred to it, give you an, were they taking heart medication? So, you're kind of putting these pieces together to be able to, because I guess I always think, oh, you wait until they get an autopsy to determine what you're like, no. Talk a little bit about that, because I found that to be super, as an armchair detective, I just thought that to be really fascinating.
The scene of death is so important. And people think, well, the forensic pathologist runs down to the scene. No, they can't do that. They're in the middle of an autopsy. You can't just leave it on the table. So people like me are the eyes and ears. When I go into a scene, the first thing I do is take my hands off my ears, put them over my mouth. Listen, don't talk, and observe. Keep your eyes open. So when I arrive on scene, I find what we call the HMFIC, the head mother in charge, and I get the facts, like who called 911, who found him, were the windows open, were the doors broken in? Tell me how exactly this scene looked before, when you first got here. And if anything's changed, you better tell me now. Because if the windows are all shut and then you opened them all to get out the smell or the heat, that's going to affect my determination of time of death because I need a body temperature. See?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll find out the basic facts in the hallway. Then I go into my scene and I absorb the totality of it. And in that, I gain a sense of how the person lived. How you live often defines how you die. So if I come into a scene and I see scales and white powder and little glassine bags, drug dealer, okay, or drug distribution center. And that's going to affect the way they die. Of course, it's a dangerous job. Now, on the other hand, if I come in their Birkenstock sandals and PBS Channel 13 tote bags, okay, that's a whole nother lifestyle, a peaceful lifestyle. And now they say that the body belongs to me and the scene belongs to the police. But no, my body is what makes it a scene. So we have to work independently. Of course, it's an independent investigation, but we have to work cooperatively. So while I'm doing the body, I'll call crime scene over and the detectives and say, okay, listen, here's what I just found. Notice the angle of that abrasion right around the bullet hole. This guy had to be shot from below, right? And look at, well, you showed me that bullet impact mark on the wall. That means he was shot from an unusual angle. So we'll point out things to each other. I'll show them things to photograph on the body. When I go to look at the scene, I'm with them. And I'm like, oh shit, wait a second. Is that a blood drop in the bathtub? So whose blood is that? And we're going to get it. We're going to sample that blood and get DNA. So it's a very independent, yet very cooperative and collegial investigation.
It's funny, your demeanor kind of changed a little bit. You were like, it was like you were back at the scene, you're talking to your investigators. You and I have something in common. We both have fathers who were New York police officers. And so
Mm-hmm.
as I was reading your book, I was thinking, how much did that help you when you first started the job? Because you were very open and honest, which I absolutely appreciated because, as a reader, when I go into a memoir, I don't want I don't want someone who's glossing over everything. I want to learn something. And it feels like you were really honest in your story. And it was the key here, processed pain. You had processed it. And so you were in a place where you could talk about it. But like, I know I'm like jumbling around, but like, how much did that help in having a New York cop as a father to be able to, in a very male dominated position, you were the only female MLI there, right?
Sure, initially. One woman was hired before me, but she only lasted 3 months.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the honesty of your book and kind of, um, because you could hide behind a veneer. I mean, and I think you did for a long time as you were a young woman, right? So talk a little
Oh,
bit about that.
sure. Well, first, let me say about having a cop father, it's invaluable. Totally, totally. It works. If I just go in and say, yeah, my dad was on the job here in the 19th precinct. Really? Oh, what did he do? He was a captain here. Then he was an exec over in the 2-3 and, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're part of the family. You're almost over the blue line. So I know how police officers talk. I know their attitudes. I know their feelings and I know their resentments. It's a scary job. It's really scary and they are underappreciated. So that helps enormously. Now, as far, excuse me, as far as honesty, I have no choice. Sure, I lived under a veneer for many, many years, one being gay. It was kind of hard back in my day. You could be arrested, you could be prosecuted, all kinds of horrible things could happen. And so I kind of lived that way, just behind it. Like, oh, yes, I have a boyfriend. His name is Earl. And,
Yeah, you got
he does
really good at
gossip.
hiding.
Yeah, right. No, actually, what was his name? Carl. Oh, yes, I made up Carl. But on the job here, I thought, no, 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 I have to be myself completely. So I didn't announce that I was gay, but if anyone asked, and yeah, you seeing any guys? No, I'm seeing women. Okay. So I felt free. As far as honesty and sharing one's story in full vulnerability, two things happened. One was that when I turned in the first draft of the book, my editor at Simon and Schuster said, "Where are you?" I said, "Right here." He said, "No, where are you in the book?" What do you mean? He said, "Well, I want to see what you see through your eyes. I want to smell it, taste it. I want to feel what you're feeling." I said, "Oh, you want to make me cry, right?" He said, "Yeah, I want you to get real vulnerable with this." So I went back and wrote it with me in it. So what choice did I have but to say how it really felt, to talk about the shutting down emotionally, because I just couldn't deal with tragedy after tragedy, children, women, people brutally killed. You can't walk around with that in your heart all day long and then shut it off. So that was one thing, telling that story, and it actually helped me in the long run. The other was that Dr. Charles Hirsch was a man of the greatest integrity. He was my mentor, a father, a brother, and actually the only man I ever really loved. So he was a wonderful man. And for him, honesty and integrity were all that you could have and survive in that world. And there were times when I'd say, like, "Look, Doc, or Chief rather, the family wants to know, they know their brother died in a fire. They want to know how much he suffered. Should I just tell them that, no, he didn't suffer?" No, because why would you lie to them? Once you make one little lie, everything else you say is now suspect.
Mhm.
You must tell the truth, and people can handle the truth. What they can't handle is the not knowing, because their imaginations will dredge up horrible things of people being on fire. So I could go to the family and say, "Look, he died ultimately of smoke inhalation, which is not a painful death. In the beginning, there's some choking and coughing, but it's fairly peaceful. He did have some second degree burns on his hands, which were no doubt painful, but he didn't suffer for long." And they're like, "Oh, okay," because they
Yeah,
were imagining so much worse.
I really got I want to pause here with your mentor because that really came through in the book that you were, I mean, you were pretty hard on yourself, but in a way that I could relate to, of being like a know-it-all and being like someone who wanted to be right and wanted to like, I think you gave the description of you worked at the button shop at one of your part-time jobs, and you called it this like fancy French name, or you were super judgmental. And then you get in the hands of someone who's like the real deal, like someone who really lives the creed and lives, and has good advice. And it felt like, how important is that for you? I mean, because some people aren't lucky enough to have mentors like that, you know? Um, and how much did that change and influence your career and your life?
Oh, he changed me so much. I learned so much from him, not just about honesty and integrity and forensic science, forensic medicine, but um, about humility. He was the most humble man. And, he's the chief medical examiner of the city of New York, the highest in the land. And when young students came in, he'd see them in the hallway and he'd just say, "Hi, I'm Charles Hirsch. Would you care to join me in the autopsy suite?" They'd be like, "Yeah, sure." Never once did he say, "I'm the chief medical examiner. I will be going to autopsy." No, he was a humble, real guy. When
Mhm.
we wanted to go out to dinner, it was him, me, and his wife. We couldn't get a reservation sometimes at a good place. I'd say, "Just tell them who you are." He said, "Barbara, I would never, ever do a thing like that." And because I loved him for that, I realized that's how I need to be. If I want to love myself and have others love me, I have to have integrity. Now, do I make mistakes? Absolutely. mostly sins of omission, failure to tell somebody something rather than telling a lie. But I learned from him about humility, kindness, integrity, and it's just a good way to live your life, a really good way. And so I think he changed the course of my life. Absolutely. Now, was he ever wrong? Yes. During 9/11, things were awful. We were seeing things, we were doing body recovery, identification, sorting through body parts. We were seeing things that were undescribable, indescribable, what have you. And people were drinking, having affairs, going gambling. I mean, they were just in so much pain. It just, people started acting out. And
Wait a second. So let me cut you off for just a second. So what you're saying, it wasn't ground zero bodies. You were seeing those too, but this was the aftermath of people's emotional reactions to the horror of the tragedy. Is that what you're meaning?
I mean, mostly that we were in doing body recovery. No, the shock of 9/11 was enough. I mean, the whole country was in shock, and that was hard for us. But the work we were doing, digging through the rubble for body parts, and even worse, talking to the families and asking them things like, oh, what was written in your husband's wedding ring? Or did your wife have manicured hands, manicured, pedicured toes? What color polish did she like? Because we were finding parts like that, a finger.
Mm-hmm.
And so working with the families, picking up the most gruesome of body parts, people were just really flipping out. And we were working 14-hour days initially. So people acted out because they were in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to him, this is happening, and maybe we should have some kind of therapy or something. He said, Barbara, no, we are very, very strong people. We do this job because we can, and we are very, very strong. We don't need that. Well, of course he was wrong. But, he was stoic. He was the kind of guy that never let his emotions interfere with his judgment of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So when he made certain calls or, gave certain diagnoses on police or firemen who died, after working on the pile, they got cancers and things. Sometimes it was not what the family wanted to hear, but he stood by it because it has to be honest, has to be truthful. And people screamed at him, and people, berated him in the newspapers. Oh, he's not respecting the death of a hero. He was respecting truth.
Well, how was he not respecting a death of a hero? I guess I'm not like, what, can you give me an example?
Sure, there were some who were injured in 9/11 or inhaled things that gave them cancer, and they were in a great deal of pain. And they took the pain medications that were prescribed for them, but in time they didn't work anymore. And sometimes people would chop up those pain meds and inject them intravenously and die of an overdose. Now, the cause of death, are you going to say murdered on 9/11 or, the result of 9/11? You have to say drug overdose. You have to, because that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And did the person have every reason in the world to use drugs that way? Yes, they were in terrible pain.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't lie ever. You have to tell what is the truth. And he had a very hard time with that, but he did it anyway. And he took people screaming at him, the newspapers criticizing him. He took it because he's a gentleman, because he's a man of honor.
Mm-hmm.
This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
OMG, yes.
It's an absolute riot. Woo! And the only movie that can be described as
so much weirder than the last time. What last time?
It's the frequel.
You ready?
We've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays. What deeply out-of-touch old person came up with that? You did. Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
This episode is brought to you by Espolón Tequila. Slow, sticky, snoozy. They call these the dog days of summer. But Espolón? They don't do boring. Welcome to the Marg Days. Espolón Tequila. 100% blue Weber agave, born to shake up your summer. Just add lime, agave, and a little attitude. Visit EspolónTequila.com. Espolón Tequila, 40% alcohol, volume 80 proof. Copyright 2025 Campari America, New York, New York. Drink responsibly.
Hellmann's believes they can turn any mayo hater into a lover. So, if you know someone who thinks mayo equals bland, show their taste buds the truth and challenge them to try Hellmann's flavored mayo. With irresistible flavors like Hellmann's spicy mayo, garlic aioli, chipotle, and Italian herb, they'll be eating their words. Challenge haters to try Hellmann's flavored mayo and get them to eat their words. Learn more at hellmanns.com/eatyourwords.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, one of the things that I was in your book was the honesty, I think, in your discussing your alcoholism from the get-go. Like,
yeah.
and doing this job and how many, I mean, it's like as I was reading, I was like, be careful, Barbara, you're getting into some tough territory here. Be careful. The way that you described the scene above the deli and just the sense, I mean, your descriptive power was just, you couldn't get the smell of fear out of your nose. How did you deal with that? How did you handle that? And what was it like, kind of acknowledging your alcoholism? And did you do that for your readers? Is that who you're trying to speak to? Is like, who is your reader?
Yeah. When my editor told me to be honest and put it all in there, I did. Oh, yeah. And I thought, well, if I'm going to tell this story, I better tell all of it. And that includes the fact that I'm an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic who fucked up, who messed up my life a lot in the early days. And finally, through alcoholism, through the services and help offered to me, that's how I got this job.
And I know it was amazing. I was thinking it was so ballsy of you to go in for an informational interview and then get a job. Like, how does that? How did that? Did you even have any inkling that was going to happen?
No. I call this a God shot. This is where there's a confluence of events or people that step in or out of your life who guide you in a certain way. So when I got sober, I had a sponsor and I went to meetings and they said to me, you are underemployed. You're very educated, but you're working part-time in a button store off the books because I got fired from my, hospital director job. And they said you should go to EPRA, employment program for recovering alcoholics. And I did. And they told me, after these infinite number of tests, Minnesota multiphasic, Brigg-Myers, personality preferentials, whatever they are, they said you should either be a poultry veterinarian or a coroner. And poultry, why poultry? Well, because if you work with little kittens and dogs, you'll get very upset because you do have an attachment to them. But chickens have beady little eyes. No one cares about them. So work with chickens. I said, I'll take the dead people, thinking that, oh, you can't get emotionally involved with a dead person.
Mm,
Oh, honey, was I wrong? Whew.
mm-hmm.
And not only do you get involved with what happened to this person and see it in your head because the evidence is in front of you, you carry it, and then you have to work with the families.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go and talk to that family and tell them exactly what happened, even when they're screaming in grief. You have to tell them what happened, and you have to tell them everything.
Mm.
So they don't. I remember one time a young man was with his mother. She was visiting for the weekend. They were very close, and he was awaiting his HIV testing.
Oh,
And they were in the bedroom late, drinking wine, talking, gossiping, and he excused himself to go to the bathroom. And he didn't come back after 10 minutes. His mother came out, looked for him, saw the window was wide open, but he wasn't there. She found a note from him, a horrible note, admonishing her, don't you dare and tell anyone about my HIV test, things like that. And then he jumped out the window. She looked out. My God, this poor woman, the shock damn near killed her. So now I show up and I'm talking to her, and she turns away from me and starts banging her head against the wall very hard. I grabbed her. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? She said, I'm trying to wake up. You are a nightmare. You're just a nightmare. This is not real. I'm going to wake up. Banged her head. I had to take her and hold her to prevent her from hurting herself. Her sorrow was overwhelming, and that goes right into me and into my heart. So as far as detaching, no. Dead people are very hard to work
I mean, I think that although that is a really like emotional, feeling and story, it was you described a situation of these lonely people, the to-go boxes in the refrigerator that you thought it's this huge, cocaine ring, and you're really getting excited. I can just see myself like, oh, this is my first big case, and I'm going to call the DEA, and they're going to be so impressed. And, they're that ego's coming through. And then you just realize these are packets from a to-go. She ordered to-go every single night, right? Or the guy who's got his contact list as 911. I mean, those are the things that like I feel like I would go home and just be like, isn't it our worst nightmare to die alone?
with.
To
The
die.
loneliness. Yeah.
Yeah.
New York is a place for lonely people because you can live in your little apartment, you can be on your own, but then when it becomes too much, you can go out in the streets, walk among people, go to a diner and sit and have a cup of coffee next to someone. You can have some human contact. And, those who die alone and are undiscovered for a week or two, and they're decomposing. And it's such an awful thing. And Dr. Hirsch called that the stench of loneliness.
Mm.
You're so lonely that no one checks on you for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I once, a suicide researcher came to talk to me about why New York has the lowest suicide rate in the country. And I said, Greek diners. What are you talking about? And I said, just that. When you're lonely, you can go sit in a diner. The counterman will talk to you for a moment. They're open 24 hours a day. You can sit there and have coffee or have breakfast, smile at people. And that is invaluable. He didn't believe me, but I know I'm right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your writing is so beautifully horrific. I think a line here that I wrote, I'm going to sound like a complete fan here, but like so many scenes of destruction, it was gorgeous. And it just feels like you were trying to, throughout your career, find the beauty in the most awful, awful things. Um,
I don't know about that if I was trying to find the beauty, but I am I love abandoned things or ruined things because I sense a history.
mm-hmm.
And when something is completely destroyed, there's a certain beauty in seeing it broken down into its elemental parts. But in the case of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, they drove a truck in there full of explosives and blew out like a couple of football fields worth of floors and killed 6 people. Um, it was beautiful because the pit was huge, absolutely huge. And in the bottom were broken cars and steel girders and all these strange pieces of metal and dirt and concrete. And at the same time, there were spotlights waving all over the pit. And there was a huge water main that had been broken into the explosion. And it was pouring water into the center of the pit of the crater. And the water reflecting the spotlights and the cars and the crushed metal. It was gorgeous.
I'm sorry. I think you're trying to find the beauty you just described that like amazingly. But like when you were talking about the caves, like I had no idea that there were caves and tunnels underground, like a network where like a couple thousand people lived, and there's different ones throughout the city, like the one that you described where it was kind of more posh, and then there's another one over by some other river. And just like you were so game for going there and like wanting that kind of thrill seeking, it sounds like. Talk a little bit about because most people might not want to go down into the depths of like New York hell, for fun.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I'm a thrill seeker. Now, I don't put myself in danger.
Yeah.
So when I say I'm going down into the caves, of course, excuse me, of course, we have police with me, detectives, and we have emergency services unit. Now, the ESU are the big guys of
I
the,
wrote that down here.
yeah, they
I
are,
liked your description. They sounded
yeah.
very capable.
Yeah, they're super capable people. And there are some women on the team too. It's people who are fit, muscular, can-do attitude, not afraid of anything, and they're like problem solvers. If you can't find a way into an apartment, they'll find a way to get through a window and drop down with a parachute or whatever the hell it is. They know how to do things like MacGyver. Um, So when I went into that cave, I had all these, people with me. And excuse me, it's pollen time in New York.
Yeah, it's in Seattle too. So I hear you.
Yeah. So, and when I wanted to climb up the side of a cave wall onto a ledge, of course they had all the equipment and harnesses on me, and I love stuff like that. So I don't really risk my life, but I do love a good thrill.
Mm-hmm.
So going down into the caves beneath New York, there's tunnels, abandoned tunnels from Amtrak and other water tunnels. And the little caves in there, they're naturally occurring. People live in them. And I don't mean that they just huddle in the cave in a ratty old blanket. I mean, they have a bed with a quilt on it. I remember the first one I saw was a yellow checked quilt over a kind of saggy single bed, and a bookshelf with paperback books on it. That too was saggy because it's damp down there. And most striking to me was that on the ledge of this cave was a French poster for Dubonnet. It says Dubo, Dubon, Dubonnet.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the same poster in my kitchen.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, I relate to this guy. I love books. I like to lay in bed and read books, and I love French posters.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a person who lives there. They even cook. So the other caves, like the ones beneath around Columbia Presbyterian, around 168th, further uptown near the Hudson River, that's a rougher crowd in there. I don't know if they have posters, but I've seen quite a few homicides in there.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you tried to always put yourself in their position, the dead's position, not judge them. Like, did that come naturally for you? Because you went to a lot of places that were really I think you had mentioned one like Skid Row where there was like a Reader's Digest and you kind of related to, somehow connecting the humanity, you
Right.
know, because I'm sure it's hard to hold on to your humanity in that type of a job.
It sure is. I used to be very judgmental as a young person, and that was just a reflection of my own insecurity. If
Right.
you hurry up and judge someone else, that maybe you won't get judged. Please, honey, how did I learn that? I unlearned it, thank God. The man who's what you would call a bum back then, or lives in a flop house, is an alcoholic who pays $5 a day for a cot in this miserable little old hotel. It's easy to judge him. Oh, he's an alcoholic, but I'm an alcoholic.
Mhm.
So I know how it is. And to see that he had this little story in a Reader's Digest, was probably 15 years old or more. It was a romantic story. And he had a picture of his ex-wife,
Mhm.
I guess from before he bottomed out. And how can you not see the humanity in that?
Mhm.
It's just remarkable. And it just reminds me, alcoholism is not some voluntary thing like, hey, I feel like getting high. It is a disease. It is a disease of addiction, of incomprehension. It's
Mhm.
a horrible, horrible disease. I am infinitely grateful that I found recovery, and got out of that. Been 33 years now.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are there
And
any
smoking too. No smoking anymore, not for 34 years.
really?
Yeah, that
So
was
what do
hard.
you do for that? You got to replace it with something. Um,
Yes.
what have you learned what have you developed? Like hiking or,
Mm.
kayaking or those are things I do, but like, what do you do?
A lot of candy, which I stopped a couple years ago because, ruins your health. So yeah, a lot of alcoholics love sweets. We always have them at the meetings. But
Like hard candy or like chocolate or like,
oh, chocolate cake, cookies, everything.
okay, okay, okay.
Plenty, you
All
name
right.
it.
All right.
Coffee and cake. But the thing that I think helps most is a good spiritual belief. You don't have to be religious or anything. I'm certainly not. But, a belief in something higher and stronger than yourself, a higher power, and um, taking care of yourself and taking pride in that. Uh, just knowing that I'm doing the best I can for me and making choices that make me feel better about myself. Yeah, that's the ticket.
Okay, so when I first saw you on I was watching the Homicide New York,
Mhm.
and I was like, that's a woman I could follow. She's pretty cool. Are you getting that kind of a response to people? Like since you were on the show, you're getting your own show. Talk a little bit about that journey. Your book came out. Like,
Yeah.
you're kind of a badass. Like, tell me about it. You're,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of am.
Yes, I am kind of a badass. I will do dangerous things. I will do things on the edge of life, which doesn't mean that I'm fearless. I am full of fear. Um, but I just like to know. I'm so curious. And that Netflix show got me a lot. Now, yes, people wrote to me. They said lovely things. They asked me questions. I try to answer, as much fan mail as possible. And a lot of mail came from alcoholics and depressives who said,
Mm.
thank you for normalizing it, for showing that you can come out and live and have a great life, that you can overcome these things. So I was very happy about that. And it even, God, I shouldn't even say this, but
Well,
it got
please
me,
do.
it got me a new girlfriend.
Well, awesome. Oh my God. Well, hey, that's
Um,
how did that happen? Like, did she just see you too and was like,
she
you're
saw
pretty
me on the
cool?
show and she said, "Oh, wow, what an interesting person." And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they call it slid into my DMs, sent me a message.
Um, that's confident. That's
Oh, yeah. Oh,
pretty
yes.
confident. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes, yes. She's an absolutely wonderful woman and just terrific, really wonderful. And yeah, has the balls to say, well, whatever. Has to say, yeah, you're interesting. She wrote and said something like, what an interesting career you have. I bet you have a lot of stories. I said, yes, I do. She said, I'd like to hear them. And then, from there she heard them. So
Are there any stories that I should have asked you about that I didn't, like from your book or just from your that you think that, I mean, I think that I hope in having you on the show was that like I was just so inspired by your story and just, you know, especially reading your book and that honesty. I mean, sometimes that doesn't work out where, you know, you put yourself on the plate and people might not like what they read, you know? And you know, anything that you think would be, you know,
hmm.
I haven't asked.
I don't know. Have you finished the book yet? Have you?
I have like 15 pages left.
Okay, then I'm not going to tell you.
So tell me, because
No. You'll see that I did go through a very, very rough period when I lost my job. Toward the end of my career, I had become chief of staff at the agency,
you've
which
taken Hirsch's job.
no, he was the chief of forensic pathology. I was the chief of staff to him. So
Oh,
I was
okay.
responsible for the agency, and especially politically. And when a new mayor came in, he can, of course, replace the top people at agencies, the chiefs, just like that. And I lost my job, and I therefore lost my identity. And as strong as I thought I was, losing my life's work,
I
my
can't even
purpose,
imagine.
the relevance of my life had disappeared. I was used to working hard, trying to help people. And now, what did I have? I had no purpose. And I had a major breakdown, major. So I'll let you see what happened.
Well,
But
no, well, just please.
no, because the readers have to read it and find out.
Okay,
But
well, obviously you are like a phoenix arose from the ashes, and that's what I love is the story of people who, even though you fucked up somehow or lost something or were fired or were kicked to the curb, you
yep,
didn't give up. You didn't go back to alcohol. You are now on top of the world again, right?
that's,
I mean, does
that's
that feel like it's like, is that true? Just tell me.
absolutely. I've never had a better life. Never. The story ultimately is about resilience. That whether you're an alcoholic, a drug addict, a depressive, a suicidal person, any of those things, it gets better if you get help. Get help, you get better. And I came out of wanting to be dead to wishing I could live another 30, 40, 50 years because my life now is amazing. A successful book, one TV show. I now have a new TV show that we're just finishing up filming. That'll be out on Oxygen and Paramount. And a new life of unlimited potential. And even at my age, the book is not over. The chapters just keep on coming. And whatever you do, don't give up. Keep going for your dreams and say yes to opportunities. But first of all, get help. It's out there.
Mwah. Chef's kiss. Love the book, What the Dead Know. I loved it. And congratulations. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Especially with how busy you are. I appreciate it so much. And I'll send you a link to the show.
My pleasure. Great to meet you.
All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.
From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself. Music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.